Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Coming at you live via broadcasting on YouTube and Facebook. It's our first show of the year. Isn't that exciting? Happy New Year, everybody. Hoping that your 2021 is better than your 2020. Now, I know a lot of people have been complaining and saying that 2020 wasn't that good, but I got to tell you, the NFL did it right. The season's finally over. We're going to talk about that and a lot more, man. We got some great stories for today, including what happened in Philadelphia. Last night was so weird. The NFL coaching purge has begun, and we're going to be talking about all the coaches that have been fired already or will be fired in the next 24 hours on Black Monday. Then we're going to cover the NFL playoff picture. It's finally clear as day. We can finally know who's in the playoffs and who's not. Then we're going to dip into the mailbag. Take questions from you people out there. My name is John Tedora, and I am your host today on the What's on Sports podcast. Of course, we are brought to you from our parent company, which is whatsonsports.com, and with our sponsor, which is sportstradingsystems.com. If you want to learn how to trade sports like other people trade stocks, go over to Sports Trading Systems, where you can learn all the secrets that you need to do to change your life in 2021. You want to make some more money? You want to have some potential to change your life? Go over to sportstradingsystems.com right now. It's not just picking your favorite team or anything like that. This is about learning how to use backtested historical data to invest in sports the same way people invest in stocks. Now let's talk about the weekend. And what a weekend it was, not just around the country, but around the world. Now, for those of you that don't know out there, I work for a company called, of course, What's on Sports. We're Sports Pub LLC. We are quite a large company. We have about 200 employees that work remotely. Some are in our home base in Jacksonville, Florida, and some of them work not only across the country, but around the world, including myself. I am currently working out of Thailand, and most of my team that works on the back end of everything is from the Philippines. And over here in Thailand right now, we had gone through 9 months of what was in the current situation that goes on around the world had to be considered bliss. We had almost no COVID, none that was reported, at least. Every once in a while, you would hear about a case that had flown in, an expat that had come in, or a Thai national that had been repatriated or something like that. We had no COVID. Well, recently, as of around Christmas time, we had a huge COVID outbreak, and the entire town is actually on lockdown. So for those of you that have gone through lockdowns or have had amenities taken away from you, I now know what it feels like. So this has been a hellish 10 days for me, basically stuck inside of what happens to be a pretty large condo. So I'm lucky, but I pretty much had my social life taken away. So all I'm doing right now is focused on sports, and at least I have that. And I got to tell you, what a weekend it was too. The NFL was such an amazing weekend. I can't imagine them putting together a better week 17. And, before we talk about anything, I think there's a moment right now that needs to be said. NFL, congratulations. Good for you guys. You guys absolutely positively killed it as far as getting the 17 weeks in with very few problems. Now, I know people complained and bitched and moaned, and that's what people do. And somebody will find a problem or a fault in something that you've done. But in my opinion, in my personal opinion, I think you guys did an amazing job of making sure that we had 17 amazing weeks of football. Now, there were some teams that had to go through some hardships because of some of the adjustments that were made. The Pittsburgh Steelers were among them. There were other teams, of course, that had to be, the Baltimore Ravens actually got their entire team almost sick at one point. Cleveland had to play 1 week with no wide receivers. San Francisco had a tough week where they had to try to field the team. The Raiders had a tough week where they had to field the team. Some of this was brought on by themselves. Some of this was just things that happened because of the virus. But either way, the NFL was able to give us 17 weeks of entertainment, and for that, you will always be remembered as one of the leagues that did it absolutely positively right. And what a Sunday yesterday was. Now let's go back to that. Yesterday was an amazing Sunday. To watch the Dolphins flame out in what has to be one of the most epic failures that you've seen in a long time. I mean, they had one game they had to win. The Bills were only going to play their starters in the first half. I think the Bills starters scored 35 points in the first half on a team that at one point in the middle of the season had to be considered one of the best defenses in football. Just unbelievable that this happened. How did this happen? How could this team go from being so good to being so bad? It's unbelievable to me. It's one of those things that really is going to take a while to really explain. What else did we see yesterday? We saw the Cleveland Browns, after 18 years, finally make the playoffs. Now, I'm no Browns fan, I can tell you that. As I've said many times on the show, if I had to pick a team, I would say I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I would say I'm pretty much a diehard about it. Now, as much as I don't particularly care for the Browns, I don't particularly dislike them either. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the fans of Cleveland because they've had something taken away from them that they really cared about, and that was the Cleveland Browns, originally taken away from them, moved in the middle of the night to Baltimore, and that team became the Ravens. So for a few years, the Cleveland people had no team. Well, they got the Browns back, and they fought through tooth and nail to go out there and be a good dog pound, to be a good fan base, go out and support that team. And what they've been given back has been absolute trash up until this year. Absolute trash. And the moment that they drafted Baker Mayfield, I told everybody that franchise will turn itself around. It's not going to be as fast as everybody thinks. It's not going to be a year. It's not going to be 2 years. But in 3 or 4 years, that franchise will turn itself around, and they will be perennial competitors to make themselves into the playoffs. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be champions. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win Super Bowls. And I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs every year. But Baker Mayfield is going to make that team into a team that actually people are going to be afraid of. They're going to be a little bit weary of, and it's a team that could make the playoffs every year. They now have the potential to be that team, and this year they made it. Now they snuck in. Let's be honest. They beat a Pittsburgh team that played probably 40% of their starters, a Pittsburgh team that played a quarterback who last year was absolutely horrendous, who didn't look bad yesterday, and Cleveland barely won. So Cleveland has to go into Pittsburgh next week and try to win their first playoff game in 2 decades. Can they do it? I don't think so. Let's keep it in the Northeast. Let's talk about what happened last night in Philadelphia, because it is a head scratcher. Philadelphia plays basically a meaningless game against Washington. Now, for Washington, this is not a meaningless game, but for Philly, it is. Philly's already eliminated. But for Washington, this is a win and you're in situation. And I've told people before that I think that Washington, under the proper circumstances, could be one of the most scary teams in the NFC because you just don't see them coming. And they have a front four that can put pressure on you. They can run the ball. They're pretty much a good defense overall. And Alex Smith doesn't make a lot of mistakes. So Washington could be that sleeper team in the NFC East. I'm sorry, in the NFC that could actually win the whole thing or at least scare the heck out of some people. So they go into Philly. Washington's got to win. Philly hangs in tough. Now, Jalen Hurts doesn't have the best night. But when the fourth quarter comes around, Jalen Hurts is about 7 for 20, not having his best night, not looking the best, but he gets pulled. His coach pulls him for the third-string quarterback. Doesn't pull him for Carson Wentz. Pulls him for the third-string quarterback because he just thinks that the guy did. I believe the quote was, he's been with us for 4 years. We just wanted to see, or he deserved the opportunity. I believe that was what was said. Which to me is quite possibly one of the most ridiculous things you could possibly say to somebody. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. He's been with us long enough. He deserves a chance. When did that become something that happens in the NFL? When did your tenure give you an opportunity in the NFL? For that alone, Philadelphia should fire their head coach. I know he's a Super Bowl winning coach, but just for that, for having that type of culture, for inspiring that type of culture that says, you've been here long enough. Let's give you an opportunity. You should be let go. Now, I will change that opinion if perhaps that opinion is based around the fact that, hey, listen, we're out of it for the year. This guy's been working his ass off. I wanted to give him an opportunity to go out there and show people what he can do. He's got a contract coming up. I don't know the details behind it that much. If that's what's going on, if the coach was doing this guy a solid by saying, hey, you've been a heck of a player for us. You've been a great backup. You've been a good mentor. We're gonna let you go in there. We're gonna let you throw the ball around a little bit. His name is Nate Sudfeld, by the way. If you're gonna let Nate go out there and throw the ball around and see if you can make yourself a little bit of money next year, or show us that you have some value so you can stay with us on this team, show that you should be the backup because we're gonna get rid of Carson Wentz. I don't know the thought process behind it, but in the public, this does not look like a very smart thing to really do. I think it sets a bad precedent as far as your culture goes. So it is Black Monday, and coaching changes will be happening today. They will. It's just going to happen. As a matter of fact, we've already had a few of those coaching changes happen already. And our next guest is coming out here today to talk to us about what coaching changes will be happening around the NFL. Ladies and gentlemen, Lance Fernandez has joined us. He's our head writer over at What's on Sports. Lance, how are you today, first of all?
Doing great, John. And hope you notice new haircut, new year, new things, new haircut. So
I actually like it, man. You look pretty sharp. I got to be honest. I wasn't loving what you had, the hair helmet thing you had going on before. But to me, this says I'm a pro and I should be on a podcast every day.
Thank you. Yeah,
much cleaner, very professional. Let me just tell people out there that don't know a lot about the NFL, kind of learning the rhythm of the NFL. The Monday after the very last Sunday of the year is known as Black Monday. This is the day when coaches are literally thrown out of the building, fired, GMs are fired. I mean, this is usually when it all happens. Now, this year, we had a few teams already make moves in the middle of the season. And I don't know how many that is. Is that 3 or 4? How many teams have already fired their coaches? Do you know, Lance?
I believe that's about 3, but the most prominent of which is Matt Patricia being fired with the GM of the Lions, who were former Patriots personnel. So they are already canned, and Detroit has already started the process of finding a coach and a GM.
Okay. So there were 3 teams that had a head start, and then today is Black Monday. So how many coaches have been fired so far as of right now?
Okay, as of right now, 2 coaches have gotten the so-called coaching guillotine because the fan base and the front office had enough. First of all, Adam Gase, obviously, after 2 seasons with the New York Jets, he compiled a 9-23 record. So that's an atrocious record to begin with. We all hope that his win streak at the end of this season could have saved his job, but it was not enough because the purge was happening in New York nevertheless. And other coach that has already taken the axe in his head coaching head is Doug Marrone of the Jacksonville Jaguars. In 4+ seasons, he has a record of 23-43. And I guess the management has just seen enough, and they just cut ties with Marrone. And rumor has it that former Ohio State head coach Urban Meyer is on his way to Jacksonville to head the team.
Really? Well, first of all, look at that in many ways is really kind of a messed up thing. First of all, there's a Rooney Rule in place that means that Jacksonville has to interview at least one minority candidate. If they don't go through that process, I believe there are some strong penalties for that. Second of all, I don't believe that Urban Meyer is going to do well I don't know what you think, but I don't think Urban Meyer is going to do well in the NFL. I don't think that what Urban Meyer does, which is really, he's great at recruiting. He's great at developing systems that these kids can learn really fast. He's great at getting guys wide open in the college ranks. I don't think that's going to work as well in the NFL with what he does. I mean, what do you think about Urban Meyer making that transition?
I kind of agree with your statements, John, because for one season to work well, everything has to work well in the NFL. Even if you have a great coach that came from college, we know that dominating college coaches, they are accustomed to a culture wherein they are in control, like the Nick Sabans, the guys like Lou Holtz and the guys like those. It's only Pete Carroll in recent memory that I can recall a college coach that eventually succeeded in the NFL and win a Super Bowl title. Everybody else who won national titles, everyone else who were great in college was not accustomed to the system wherein their players are paid more than them and they might not get their respect. So that's a tough fit for Urban Meyer, especially essentially with the fact that Jacksonville doesn't have much in their cupboard to start with.
Yeah, you look at the situation you're talking about. Pete Carroll is a completely different kind of coach, in my opinion. He's a laid back guy. He's got a more of that almost California cool to him, where I think works a little better with a professional player. And I think that was part of why he was able to make the transition. He was also in a position in Seattle where he was able to draft a lot of players. So you're able to take a Russell Wilson as a rookie and take him and mold him into who you want to mold him into. So I think he was able to mix up that team and originally with some older veterans and some younger guys and really make it into a college team that he could actually really turn into something special. So you got to give him a lot of credit for that. I don't know that if Urban Meyer or anybody really in the college ranks has that ability to be able to switch like that. And I guess we'll see. Who else do you think? Is there anybody else you're looking at that could end up being a casualty of Black Monday or even tomorrow?
Any casualty of Black Monday? Well, he just saved his job recently because the Bengals management decided to stick with him. Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals. Seems like he's on his way out, but the management saved him. And same goes for Anthony Lynn, at least for now, because of the win streak that they had at the end of the season. So their jobs are safe as of now. And looking at the list right now, I guess.
Well, let's stop real quick and talk about those two. I think those are great decisions if you stay with both of those guys, because you have young quarterbacks who are both successful inside those systems. When you take a young quarterback and this happens all too much, you get a young quarterback, his first year isn't very good, you fire the coach, you bring in another coach, he has to learn a new system. He's not playing, he's thinking. Maybe you fire that coach. You know, you go through like your Baker Mayfield, who's had to learn 2 or 3 different systems. Your Sam Darnold, who's had to learn 2 systems already. These young guys need to come in, be inside a system, given an opportunity to shine. I think Burrow looked great before he tore up his knee. Obviously, the kid in San Diego looked amazing. So changing those coaches would mean changing those systems, which would not be advantageous for either one of those quarterbacks. I say you keep both coaches and maybe adjust their defensive personnel, their defensive coordinators, defensive coaches, make some changes like that. Who else were you going to talk about?
Okay, so for Atlanta Falcons, I guess Raheem Morris is on the hot seat. He currently has a record of 23-38, and it hasn't been good for the Falcons in the recent years. So there might be a precedence wherein he might join Marrone and Nagy in the Axe.
Well, he's an interim coach anyway. I believe he replaced Dan Quinn earlier in the year. So, I given Morris an opportunity, a second opportunity to be a head coach, is cool. But I don't know if he's going to get the opportunity to really stick around. As you said, his track record isn't that good, and Atlanta didn't change that much with Morris as the head coach. They were still a team that underperformed, got blown out. It just didn't work out for people.
Yeah. So
who else you got? Anybody else?
I guess so far everybody is safe. Not much on the hot seat, but we know for the NFL it stands for not for long. So we don't know what happens. One day, a coach's seat is safe, and then the other, we'll just hear the breaking news that he's got fired. So,
all right. Awesome. Well, we really appreciate it, Lance. Lance will be over at What's on Sports, writing up some really cool articles. You're doing an article on this, right, with a little more detail as the day goes on, correct?
Yes, we will do. It will also include coaches that might replace these coaches that have been axed.
Awesome. Looking forward to reading it over, Lance. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right. Today's been a good day. I want to talk about the playoff picture and how things have changed around the NFL. Now, there were some teams that were on the border that didn't make it. Obviously, we talked about the Dolphins. The Dolphins, such an epic explosion. And I lived in Miami for almost 20 years. So while I remain to be a Steeler fan, I do follow the Dolphins. Dolphin fans are kind of 50-50. There are some really good Dolphin fans. There are a lot of people that just think there's too much going on in Miami. So the fans are kind of wishy-washy, some of them. But the ones that are good fans are really good fans, and they deserve a little better than what happened to them yesterday. They really thought this was their year to break the streak, make it to the playoffs. Didn't work out for them. We've got some great matchups coming up this weekend. There's some matchups I really want to see this weekend, and there are some matchups I'd like to see beyond. Let's talk about the AFC. You look at got the Colts against the Bills. That should be a cakewalk for the Bills. Bills should walk right through that. If they do, they have a very good chance of meeting the Steelers again. Now, that Monday night game wasn't as close as the score looked, but that first half they played was actually a really good first half until Pittsburgh melted down and kind of gave them the game. So I, for one, would love to see the Bills and Steelers again in round 2. And I would also love to see either either the Titans or the Ravens against the Chiefs, because both of those teams are the kind of team that can give the Chiefs some trouble. We're talking about teams that can run the ball, control the clock, things like that. So that's what we're looking for. On the NFC is completely different to me. NFC, we're looking at Saints and Bears. I think the Saints run over the Bears with no problem. Seahawks and Rams, these guys have already played each other twice this year. I'm not sure the Rams get their quarterback back. Seahawks should run over them as well. Then we're looking at Washington and the Buccaneers. I think that's the best game on the slate, in my opinion. That should be the best game on the slate, and I'm looking at Washington to upset the Buccaneers right now. Now, I'm going to have some real picks later on in the week, but for right now, I'm just telling you what I'm looking at when I'm just eyeballing this. So don't put any money on anything yet. I'm just eyeballing this and telling you what I think. Works out that way. Washington plays the Packers. Seattle plays the Saints. And I'm telling you what, round 2 in the NFL playoffs could be better than round 1. But all these teams are pretty good. I'm a little shocked the Bears made it, but they have been rolling along. I don't know, man. I think the NFL really did it right. I love this 7-team format. I love that one team gets a bye. I love the teams that ended up making it. I can't say enough about how great the NFL has done this year. Absolutely fantastic. Now, as I've told you before, our website is What's on Sports. It's whatsonsports.com. You guys can go over there and you can check out all sorts of great articles and features and fun things like that. But along with that, we also do this really cool podcast, and we let people write letters in on whatsonsports.com, and we answer those questions and letters here on the show. And we're going to do that as right now we reach inside the mailbag. Let's go to our first question. With the way the Jets have really come on in the last few games, can you see any scenario where Adam Gase gets to keep his job? I see no scenario because Adam Gase has already been fired. But let's imagine that he had not been fired, and you would have asked me that question. I would have said no, because it's not just about Adam Gase winning a couple games at the end of the year, which, in all honesty, Adam Gase and the Jets should be applauded for, because there was a natural tendency there to just give up. But that team kept fighting, team kept trying, and they were able to pull out a couple wins at the end of the year. But it's less about that, and it's more about how inept Gase has been as a coach over the last couple years. And the years before that. Again, as a Miami Dolphin follower, I realized that Gase was in Miami first and was horrible. When Gase got hired in New York, people in Miami were thanking New York. You're like, oh, great. At least we made sure you didn't get any better. We're in the same division. We appreciate it, buddy. So it actually worked out in the favor of Miami when Gase left, and it didn't work out for New York at all. Why hire a guy named Adam Gase who's been so bad? All based off of the fact that he worked for 2 years with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning made him look good. So, no, I don't think there's any scenario where Adam Gase gets to keep the New York job. And not only that, I don't think there's any scenario where Adam Gase gets a job this year. I cannot see anybody seeing the potential in Adam Gase in the NFL right now. Question number 2. Michael Irving recently came out and said that Randy Moss and people like you are out of their minds if they think Jerry Rice is not the best of all time. Does that make you change your mind at all about Jerry Rice? No, it does not. If you missed me, I think 2 weeks ago or last week on the show, I can't remember. I said that I thought that Randy Moss was the greatest wide receiver of all time, and that Jerry Rice was not. Jerry Rice was second or third. I'd have to really put together a real list. Now, I appreciate Michael Irvin. I know Michael Irvin personally. Nice guy, obviously very knowledgeable about football. But Michael Irvin is always going to speak the highest about his contemporaries. It's very rare that you're going to find someone that's going to say, yeah, the guys who played with me in the 90s are not as good as the guys who played in the 2000s or the 2010s. That's not normally going to happen. So I respect Michael Irvin. Obviously, he's a Hall of Fame football player. And probably, if I put my list together, would be considered one of the 10 greatest wide receivers of all time, maybe top 15. I don't know. I'd have to put my list together. And I respect his opinion. And I admire the fact that Michael Irvin thinks that Jerry Rice is the greatest of all time. He was number 2 to Jerry Rice's number 1 at that time. But Jerry Rice, in my opinion, is no way, shape, or form the same dynamic athlete that Randy Moss was. Jerry Rice wasn't a guy who scared the hell out of you the same way that Randy Moss did. So in my personal opinion, and this is, again, strictly my personal opinion tells you that Jerry Rice is not as good as Randy Moss. I also want to touch on the fact really quick that people are just far too sensitive anymore. This whole thing where anybody can be the GOAT, and if you say If you disagree with somebody because I think that Michael Jordan's the GOAT and you think LeBron James is the GOAT, and now it's an argument, I don't think it's an argument. I think it's a difference of opinion. I think there are some metrics that point to the fact that Randy Moss is a better overall wide receiver. But at the end of the day, this is really just about my eye test. It's not about analytics. It's not about metrics. It's not about any numbers that I've seen. It's just about, I saw Randy Moss play. Randy Moss scared the hell out of people. You had to game plan for somebody like Randy Moss. And Jerry Rice was a very good player. And yes, you did actually have to game plan for Jerry Rice, but not in the same way that you had to game plan for Randy Moss. All right, let's go with our last question really quick. We all know what the Jaguars are going to do, but if you are the Jets, do you take a quarterback with your top pick or do you stay with Darnold? What are the scenarios that you see? So 2 Jets questions today. Here are the scenarios I see, and I'll make them really simple for you. I think the Jets have to take a quarterback with the top pick. And this is the answers are really simple. It's really based on finances. Sam Darnold's in his 3rd year, going into his 4th year. They're going to have to pick up his option, which means in 2 years he's going to become a very expensive quarterback if he's a good quarterback. If you have the ability to trade Sam Darnold today and move away from Sam Darnold today and get some draft capital back for him and then pick up a quarterback, you're better off doing it strictly for finances. The best way to build a team in the NFL right now is to have a rookie quarterback and to be able to build up your team around that cheap salary in your quarterback. If Darnold is considered a top 20 quarterback when you re-sign him a year from now, he'll want $25 million or more every year. If you pick up a rookie quarterback right now, he'll want 10. So the difference is tremendous if you're trying to rebuild a team, which is what the Jets are trying to do. So I think if you look at it from a financial standpoint, you have to say to yourself, Sam Darnold has had his moment, and the coaching staff had their moment to build a team around Sam Darnold, and they failed to do so. So if you're going to make a change, you've got to make the change, and you've got to make it to a younger quarterback, basically strictly off of finances. And that's how you work out the things in the NFL. My name is John Tenora, and this is the What's on Sports podcast. It's been our pleasure to keep you guys entertained for the last 27 and a half minutes. We come to you live 5 days a week, 10:30 in the morning, on Facebook, on YouTube. Thank you all for your comments. I did read them, and I know where they come from. They come from a good place. I'll make sure I take care of it for you guys today. You all have a great day.